September 2012 had just begun at college, and Emma was enjoying the new experiences of dorm life. Her room was cozily decorated, and the evening was filled with the sounds of the city outside her window and the quiet hum of her computer. That evening, like many others, she decided to dive into the world of social media. Her attention was drawn to a new friend request from a user named Tyler. His page had several interesting posts about music, cult films, and unusual pop culture facts. Emma accepted the request, and soon Tyler sent her the first message. "Hi, Emma, I noticed you like the same music as me. What do you think of the latest album from the Black Keys?" Tyler asked. Emma was pleasantly surprised that someone had noticed her musical interests. They quickly struck up a conversation about music, and Tyler turned out to be surprisingly knowledgeable. He shared links to new tracks, discussed intricate albums, and made their conversations rich and engaging. Within a few days, their communication became more frequent and personal. They began exchanging stories about their hobbies, studies, and college life. Tyler wasn't just a music enthusiast but also a great storyteller, which made their conversations even more captivating. "Do you like jazz?" Tyler once asked. "I recently found an amazing album that blew my mind. I'd love to hear your thoughts." Emma replied that she wasn't very familiar with jazz but was happy to try something new. Tyler sent her a link to the album and a few articles about its significance in music history. Over time, they started discussing more personal topics. Tyler shared his thoughts on life, and Emma felt their conversations were growing deeper. She learned that Tyler dreamed of becoming a musician and loved the creative process. Weeks passed, and Emma got used to their regular chats. Their interactions were varied and exciting, and she couldn't help but feel that Tyler had become a good friend, even though they had never met in person. Their talks covered a wide range of subjects, from music to personal experiences, and Emma enjoyed their virtual friendship. But then came the moment when Emma decided to tell Tyler about her boyfriend. She didn't think it would change their communication and just wanted to be honest. Nervously, she typed, "There's something I haven't mentioned. I have a boyfriend, and I'm happy in my relationship. I hope this won't affect our conversations." Tyler's response was brief but sharp. He simply wrote, "I see. Hope you're both happy." Tyler's attitude changed abruptly. His messages became colder and more tense. He no longer shared new music discoveries and began frequently asking questions about her boyfriend, which felt odd and inappropriate. Emma sensed that something was wrong. The correspondence that had once brought her joy had now become a source of anxiety. Over time, Tyler's threats grew more serious. He began to claim that if Emma didn't end her relationship, he would ruin her reputation and file anonymous complaints to the college, accusing her of breaking the code of conduct. He also threatened to leak personal details about her life to jeopardize her studies. "You know how easy it would be for me to destroy everything you have. Why don't you think about whether your boyfriend is worth it?" Tyler wrote in one of his messages. Emma was in shock. She couldn't believe that someone she had talked to so much could act this way. She felt fear and anxiety building up. Every time she saw a notification from Tyler, her heart raced. And she couldn't focus on her studies or other aspects of her life. She blocked Tyler, hoping it would stop his threats, but his messages continued coming from other accounts. They became more aggressive and alarming. Each new account she blocked seemed like just another step in an endless cycle of harassment. Eventually, Emma realized the situation required intervention. She decided to reach out to her college friend, Mike, who was familiar with basic cybersecurity. Together, they began looking for ways to protect her and seek official help. Emma also started documenting all the threats and gathering evidence to eventually report them to the authorities. Her sense of peace and security was shattered, and she knew she had to act to stop Tyler and regain control of her life. The next day, after receiving particularly menacing messages from Tyler, Emma was in a constant state of stress. She couldn't focus on her studies, and her friends began to notice how withdrawn and anxious she had become. Every time her phone buzzed with a new notification, she would nervously grab it, expecting another insult or threat. That evening, when Emma returned to her dorm after classes, she found a new message from Tyler. It was a long, carefully crafted poem written in a dark and threatening tone. She read it several times, unable to believe her eyes. He was threatening to ruin her life if she didn't start interacting with him differently. "Emma, you've shattered my heart to pieces. But this is only the start of my path. If you don't return to me with obedience, I'll seek revenge, a mania's wrath. Your achievements and honor are nothing. With a single move, I can destroy everything. Your studies, your friends, all will turn to dust. If you don't listen to me now, my dear, you must. All I need is your understanding. But if not, I promise withstanding. You will know what it's like to be alone. When your world crumbles, broken by me, stone by stone. Emma felt a cold sweat on her forehead, and her hands began to tremble. This poem wasn't just threatening. It was a clear indication that Tyler would stop at nothing to intimidate her. She felt utterly helpless, and her fear reached its peak. Gathering her strength, Emma knew she had to act. Mike suggested she report the situation to the social media platform's support team and the police. Emma also decided to share her situation with a college counselor to receive professional help and support. The counselor helped her understand the steps she needed to take to protect her personal safety and academic reputation. As Emma tried to navigate the situation, her life began to feel like a constant state of fear and anticipation. She could no longer walk around campus or engage in her usual activities without the anxiety that Tyler could be stalking her at any moment. Every sound from her phone was now a reminder that the threat was still there, and she needed to be ready for whatever actions her stalker might take next. Emma couldn't believe her life had descended into chaos. Every day, new messages filled her inbox and social media accounts. These messages were full of rage and malice. Tyler was using fake profiles to spread compromising information about her, posting fabricated stories and photos that could ruin her reputation. One morning, Emma discovered that her personal information had been shared on an anonymous forum. It included details about her academic life and private photos she had never posted publicly. The feeling was horrific, knowing someone was collecting and using her personal data to harm her. In an attempt to manage the situation, Emma reached out to social media support. She provided all the necessary information about the fake accounts and threats. However, the process of blocking and removing content was slow and complex. Her complaints were addressed sluggishly, and each account removal was quickly followed by the creation of a new one. One night, while checking her emails, Emma noticed a new message from yet another fake account. Tyler threatened that if she didn't leave college and move out of town, he would begin spreading false accusations about her academic misconduct. Emma was horrified. These threats now endangered not only her personal life but also the future she had worked so hard to build. With each new message, her fears only deepened. She started taking steps to protect her privacy, including changing her passwords and installing additional security software. Her friends and family noticed her growing anxiety and decided to offer their moral and technical support. Her college counselor helped Emma file official complaints with the university administration and local law enforcement. At the police station, she recounted the events and provided all the evidence and documentation she had collected. The police took the case and began their investigation, but even they couldn't guarantee that Tyler wouldn't continue his attacks. With each passing day, the situation grew more tense. Emma couldn't sleep peacefully, and her anxiety over Tyler possibly carrying out his threats intensified. Her life was a shadow of normalcy, and every new message from her stalker was a grim reminder that her safety and privacy were at the mercy of someone's cruel games. Emma sat curled up under her blanket in her dorm room when her phone buzzed again. A notification popped up on the screen about a new message. With her heart pounding, she opened it and saw another threat from one of the fake accounts. This message was particularly terrifying. Tyler claimed that if Emma didn't agree to meet him in person, he would start stalking her in real life. "You don't understand how serious I am. If you don't meet with me, I'll start following you, no matter where you are. This is your last chance," the message read. The words hit her like a bolt of lightning. Emma felt her legs tremble with fear. She knew Tyler wouldn't stop at just threats, and now she was afraid to leave her room, unsure of what might be waiting for her outside the door. The secrets he held and the possibility of physical stalking weighed heavily on her. When Emma realized Tyler's threats were becoming more severe, she knew she couldn't handle it alone. The words haunting her through fake accounts had left her in a state of stress and panic. That evening, she decided to call her friends, hoping for their support and advice. Maggie and Josh, her closest friends, immediately responded to her call. They agreed to meet at the dorm to discuss the situation and figure out ways to protect her. When they arrived, Emma was sitting on the couch, clutching her phone, deeply worried. "Thank you for coming, guys," Emma began, her voice trembling. "This is unbearable. Tyler keeps threatening me, and I don't know how to deal with it." Maggie sat beside her and took her hand. "Emma, we're here to help you. We'll get through this together. But first, let's figure out what we can do to ensure your safety." Josh started with practical advice. "The first thing we need to do is secure your personal information. Let's check that all your social media profiles are private and remove any sensitive data that could be used against you. You should also change the passwords on all your accounts and enable two-factor authentication." Maggie added, "I can help you with that. We should also think about protecting your phone. If the threats keep coming, it might be a good idea to install a security app. And be careful about posting your location online. Don't give Tyler any more opportunities to track you." Emma nodded, her face relaxing slightly from their support. "I don't know what I would do without you. But how can I be sure he won't find me in real life?" "In that case, we need to reach out to campus security," Josh suggested. "They can help provide extra protection and contact law enforcement if necessary." Maggie added, "And we'll be here for you. You're not alone in this." They spent the evening helping Emma implement all the security measures they had discussed. Maggie and Josh took charge of changing passwords and setting up additional security while Emma worked on preparing a report for campus security about the situation. Emma felt relieved to have her friends by her side. Their support gave her the strength to face the situation and take the necessary steps. Although the fear hadn't left her, she felt like she now had a plan and resources to protect herself and fight back against Tyler's threats. When they were done, Josh and Maggie walked Emma back to her room and promised they would stand by her no matter what. Emma went to bed with the hope that, with the help of her friends and the actions she had taken, she could regain control of her life and overcome this difficult period. Emma sat at her desk in the dorm, a stack of printed threats and screenshots spread out before her. Each message, every threatening word, was meticulously documented and organized into separate files. Her heart pounded with anxiety as she prepared to meet with the police. She had written down the number for the local police department and, after taking a deep breath, made the call. The operator was patient and professional, listening to her story and scheduling a meeting for her to file a report. Emma felt a wave of relief that the police weren't dismissing her concerns this time and started preparing for the meeting. At the appointed time, she arrived at the police station, holding the folder of documents in her hands. The officer at the front desk directed her to a detective who specialized in cybercrime. Emma walked down the hallway, her footsteps echoing in the nearly empty building. Detective Brian Thompson, a middle-aged man with a serious expression and sharp eyes, greeted her in his office. Emma handed over all the materials and began explaining the situation. "So, you're saying this person has been threatening you through multiple fake accounts and also trying to intimidate you in real life?" The detective clarified as he skimmed through the documents. "Yes, exactly," Emma confirmed, her voice trembling. "I've tried blocking him, but he's created several new accounts and continues sending threats. He said he would ruin my reputation and grades and even threatened to stalk me if I don't agree to meet him." Detective Thompson nodded and began asking questions about the details of the messages and the threats she had received. He took copies of all her materials, including screenshots and emails. "We'll start by analyzing the information you've provided. We'll try to trace the IP addresses and assess how serious these threats are. In the meantime, you should take precautions and report any new threats or changes in this person's behavior," the detective said, carefully noting down the details. Emma nodded, promising to stay in touch with the police. She knew not everything could be solved quickly, but the fact that her case was being taken seriously gave her some confidence. "We'll do our best to figure out who's behind these accounts and ensure you're not harmed." The detective added, "If you receive any further threats in real life, notify us immediately. We'll also coordinate with your campus security to ensure they're aware of the situation and can help keep you safe." Emma left the police station feeling slightly lighter. Although the fear and anxiety hadn't fully left her, knowing that the police were handling her case and offering support gave her a sense of hope. Now, all she could do was wait for law enforcement to investigate and take the necessary actions. Back at the dorm, Emma updated her friends on what had happened, and they supported her through the process. They made sure her accounts were further secured and discussed a plan in case the threats continued. Emma decided to put her fears behind her and focus on returning to a normal life while the police conducted their investigation. With her case in the hands of the authorities, she hoped her fears would soon fade, and she could finally find peace again. The police began taking active steps after Emma handed over all her evidence. Detective Brian Thompson and his team dove into the intricate web of fake accounts that Tyler had used to issue his threats. At the start of the week, the detectives focused on analyzing the digital traces Tyler had left behind. They began by tracking the IP addresses linked to the accounts threatening Emma. This was no easy task, as Tyler had been using various proxy servers and virtual private networks, VPNs, to hide his location. "We're dealing with a pretty skilled manipulator," Detective Thompson told his colleagues as he reviewed logs on the screens. "His tactics leave little trace, but we need to find a way to unmask him." The police used several methods to track Tyler. They examined the IP addresses associated with the fake accounts and looked for common patterns in their activity. Often, Tyler used the same message templates and similar threats, which gave the detectives some leads. To verify their findings, the police also contacted internet service providers to obtain more precise data on the location and activity of the suspicious IP addresses. At the same time, they began analyzing digital fingerprints, such as metadata from the messages and activity logs, which could help identify Tyler's location. However, Tyler proved to be a difficult adversary. He constantly changed his digital footprint, making the police's job more challenging. Some of the accounts used for the harassment were registered through temporary email addresses and anonymous platforms. Meanwhile, Emma continued to monitor the new threats. She noticed that Tyler was still trying to send her messages through new fake profiles. Each new account contained the same elements of manipulation and threats, reinforcing her understanding that her stalker was not letting up. Fortunately, the police kept Emma informed. They regularly updated her on the progress of the investigation and offered safety advice. Within a few days, they were able to identify some key patterns that pointed to Tyler's possible location. "We've started tracking several suspicious addresses that match recent activities from the IP addresses," Detective Thompson informed Emma. "We haven't completely pinpointed his location yet, but we're moving in the right direction." Though the general mood within the police force was optimistic, apprehending Tyler remained a difficult task. His ability to manipulate his digital trail and continuously change tactics complicated the investigation. Nonetheless, they were determined to keep going until Tyler was caught and his harassment stopped. Hearing these updates, Emma tried to remain patient and hopeful. Despite her lingering fear, she felt that progress was being made. The support from the police and her friends gave her confidence that her situation would soon be resolved, and that she could return to a normal life. The police continued their investigation, delving deeper into the digital web Tyler had created. Detective Brian Thompson and his team discovered that Tyler wasn't a newcomer to cyberstalking. They found substantial evidence linking him to other similar cases. While analyzing the data, the detectives uncovered several past complaints that described similar methods of harassment. Threats via email and social media, use of fake accounts, and manipulation of victims' personal information. These cases had been reported in various parts of the country, but the methods and behavior patterns were identical. "We're seeing repeated patterns," Detective Thompson informed his team. "Tyler uses the same tactics to control and intimidate his victims. We need to investigate all his previous actions to understand how he operates and to identify any other victims he may have targeted." The police connected Tyler to several cyberstalking cases that had occurred in different states. They began cross-referencing records and data to determine just how far his crimes had spread. It turned out that Tyler had used the same network of fake accounts and even the same IP addresses for various attacks. One of the key breakthroughs in the investigation was the discovery of several old forums and chat rooms where Tyler had communicated with other participants, discussing his methods and targets. These conversations, though partially deleted, helped the detectives understand how Tyler chose his victims and how he used fear and manipulation to achieve his goals. "We can see that Tyler built a complex network to carry out his crimes," explained Detective Thompson as he reviewed the gathered data. "But we also see that he often acted alone. His connections to other crimes may not be as extensive as we initially thought, but they give us crucial insight into his methods." The expansion of the investigation required significant effort and collaboration with law enforcement agencies in other states. Thompson's team worked closely with colleagues from different regions, sharing information and trying to establish full links between the various cases. They also began searching for witnesses and victims who could help them better understand the scope of Tyler's activities. Emma tried to remain positive, staying in touch with the police and providing them with any additional information that might help solve the case. "We won't stop until we close this investigation," Detective Thompson assured Emma during one of their meetings. "We've made a lot of progress, and we're close to catching Tyler and anyone else who may be involved." The support from the police and her friends gave Emma confidence that soon her stalker would be caught, and she could finally regain peace in her life. Finally, after weeks of intense work, law enforcement released an official report stating that Tyler had been arrested for cyberstalking and extortion. The news appeared in local newspapers and on television. Emma was sitting in her dorm room when she received a notification on her phone about the report. She opened the news site and began reading the article. After months of investigation, law enforcement officers have arrested 25-year-old Tyler Jenkins on charges of cyberstalking and extortion. Jenkins, who used multiple fake social media accounts, threatened his victims and attempted to manipulate their personal information. According to police, he is also linked to several other crimes involving online threats. Jenkins has been detained and is currently in custody. Law enforcement continues to investigate in order to identify possible accomplices and assess the full scope of his activities. Quote. Emma read the article several times, trying to process the information. After all the anxiety and stress she had endured, the news that her stalker was now in custody brought her a sense of relief. But her joy was tempered by other emotions. Fear and the lingering stress from the experience still clung to her. Her friends and family called to congratulate her and offer their support. They were happy that Tyler had finally been apprehended and continued to stand by her during this difficult time. Although they tried to comfort her, Emma knew that her inner turmoil wouldn't disappear overnight. Every reminder that she had been a victim of stalking stirred up feelings of anxiety and vulnerability. That evening, as she sat at her desk, Emma reflected on her ordeal. Despite Tyler's arrest, it was still hard for her to shake the feeling that her life could be in danger at any moment. She decided to spend the evening with her friends, who had been a great source of support, and tried to distract herself from her worried mind. While talking with them, she made an effort to be as open as possible about her emotions, sharing what she had gone through and receiving their understanding and encouragement. Tomorrow, Emma planned to meet with Detective Thompson to discuss the next steps and learn more about the legal proceedings against Tyler. This meeting would help her understand what to expect moving forward and might give her a sense of regaining control over the situation. Finding herself in the spotlight after the entire incident, Emma felt a mix of relief and constant anxiety. One morning, after the report was published, she woke up with a feeling of unease that she couldn't shake. "He can't harm me anymore," she told herself, but the fear and anxiety lingered. Every new message, every notification in her inbox reminded her of the past. She couldn't escape the thought that traces of Tyler might somehow reappear in her life. Emma returned to her studies, but each class only provided partial relief. Inside, she continued to wrestle with what had happened. Her fears became especially intense when she saw messages from other users on social media or when she heard news about similar cases. The sense of constant threat never left her. Realizing that she was struggling to cope on her own, Emma decided to seek professional help. She scheduled a consultation with a psychologist to deal with the stress and fear she was experiencing. The psychologist, Dr. Liz Martin, welcomed her into her office and began working to help Emma restore her mental health. "You've shown incredible resilience, and it's important that you continue taking care of yourself," Dr. Martin said during their first session. "We'll work together to help you manage the stress and fear, and figure out how to regain a sense of safety in your life." Emma began practicing psychological techniques aimed at reducing anxiety and rebuilding her confidence. She realized that it would be a long process and that it would take time to return to normal life. She also focused on her online security, updating her privacy settings on social media and reviewing her online accounts for any potential threats. These actions not only made her feel more protected but also gave her a sense of control over her virtual life. Despite the support from her friends and family and the fact that Tyler no longer posed an immediate threat, Emma still sometimes felt uneasy. At night, she would wake up at the slightest sound, reliving moments of fear from her recent experience. Each day was a struggle. But she was determined to move forward, step by step. "I'm trying to live a normal life, but it's hard," she told Dr. Martin. "Every day, I remind myself that I can take control of my life and that I'm not alone." The psychological help and the support from those around her gradually helped Emma return to her usual routine. She understood that her fears and stress were part of her recovery process, and she continued to work on overcoming them. Several weeks had passed since Tyler's arrest, and Emma's life was slowly returning to normal, but her inner state remained in question. The stress from the cyberstalking had left a deep impact, and Emma knew she couldn't manage it without professional help. "Hello, Emma," Dr. Martin greeted her with a warm smile. "How are you feeling today?" Emma settled into a comfortable chair and sighed. "It's hard to say. I'm still feeling fear and anxiety. Sometimes it feels like I'm facing what I went through all over again. I thought Tyler's arrest would solve everything. But it turns out that's not the case." Dr. Martin nodded with understanding. "It's normal to feel this way after such a stressful event. We'll work on helping you manage this stress and rebuild your confidence. Let's start by understanding what is causing you the most concern." Sessions with Dr. Martin began with analyzing how the events with Tyler had impacted Emma. She talked about her nightly fears, constant vigilance, and difficulties concentrating on her studies. Dr. Martin employed various therapeutic methods, including cognitive behavioral therapy, to help Emma recognize and change her negative thoughts. "You've been through a serious ordeal, and it's natural that it will take time to recover," Dr. Martin explained. "We'll work on reducing your anxiety and restoring your sense of control over your life." One of the first techniques Dr. Martin suggested was deep breathing and relaxation exercises. Emma learned to manage her breathing to reduce stress and calm herself. These exercises became part of her daily routine, helping her to soothe anxiety when it arose. Dr. Martin also recommended that Emma keep a journal where she could record her thoughts and feelings. This helped Emma to become aware of and analyze her emotions, as well as track her progress in recovery. The journal entries provided a safe and confidential way for her to express her fears and concerns. Over the weeks, Emma began to notice gradual improvements in her inner state. She learned to manage her anxiety and became more confident in herself. Although fears still occasionally returned, she now knew how to cope with them. "I feel like I'm finding myself again," Emma told Dr. Martin during one of their sessions. "It's difficult, but I feel like I can control my fears and not let them control me." Dr. Martin praised her progress and reminded her that recovery is a process that takes time. She emphasized the importance of continuing to work on herself and using the techniques Emma had learned. But the calm was short-lived. A few days after Tyler's arrest, Emma began receiving new messages that caused her even more anxiety than before. On Friday evening, sitting at her computer in her dorm room, Emma noticed a new notification on her phone. The message came from an anonymous account that she couldn't immediately identify. She opened it and read a few lines, her face paling with fear. "Did you think it would end when Tyler was arrested? This is just the beginning. We will continue his work and make sure you regret your actions." Emma's heart raced, and she felt a chill run down her spine. The words in the message were clear and threatened her safety. Emma felt her fear and anxiety return with renewed intensity. She quickly closed the message and looked at the other notifications. Each new message seemed increasingly menacing, reminding her that the problem was not over. Dialing Dr. Liz Martin's number, she reported the new threats and asked for advice. Dr. Martin advised her to contact the police immediately. Emma was in a panic but knew she couldn't ignore the new threats. When she arrived at the police station to report the new threats, the officers took her concerns seriously. They listened attentively and reviewed the new messages. Officers began checking IP addresses and other digital traces to attempt to track the source of the threats. They also learned that despite Tyler's arrest, he might have connections with others who could continue his actions. Over the next few days, the threats became more persistent and specific. They included references to personal information that Tyler might have shared with his accomplices. Emma realized that she was not only the target of cyberstalking but also potentially at risk of real-life stalking. With each new message, her sense of security eroded bit by bit. Emma decided that despite her fears, she would not succumb to panic. With the support of the police and her friends, she continued to confront this new level of threats, striving to maintain hope that the situation would be resolved and that she could regain her peace of mind. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the police initiated a secondary investigation to understand who was behind the new attacks and how this connected to Tyler's arrest. The officers examined all aspects of the new wave of threats, trying to piece together who might be responsible. They initially focused on digital traces. The IP addresses from which the threatening messages originated were thoroughly checked. The use of anonymous accounts complicated the task, but investigators used all available resources to trace the source. During the analysis of digital data, the police noticed that the new threats did not just come from a single individual but might be linked to several criminal organizations operating in the region. Investigators also discovered that the new threats involved not only individual criminals but also organized crime groups specializing in cybercrimes and extortion. These groups used methods of twisted control over their victims, creating a network of fake accounts and spreading false threats to undermine the morale and psychological well-being of the victims. The police began working on establishing connections between different criminal groups and identifying key figures behind the threats. Witnesses were interviewed, and data from potential informants were analyzed to gather additional evidence. The investigation became more complex when it was found that some of the new threats were linked to criminal groups engaged in illegal activities on the black market. These groups had their own goals and interests, and their involvement in targeting Emma could be part of a broader scheme. As the investigation expanded, the police involved federal agencies and expert teams to bolster their efforts in identifying the perpetrators. They developed a strategy to combat cyber threats, including the creation of a specialized cybercrime unit focused on detecting and disrupting the activities of these groups. Time passed, and Emma continued to live with caution but also with hope that the police would ensure her safety and put an end to this nightmare. The investigation was approaching a decisive phase, and Emma hoped that she would soon be able to return to a peaceful life, free from threats and fear. While investigating connections between various criminal groups and analyzing all the collected evidence, the police made a significant breakthrough. They discovered that the new threats were not the work of a random criminal but of someone directly connected to Tyler. This person, who was one of Tyler's closest accomplices, had previously worked with him in schemes of extortion and cyberstalking. Investigators identified him as David Benson, a former criminal partner of Tyler. David had experience in manipulation and was familiar with the same tactics Tyler used to intimidate and control his victims. The investigation revealed that David had continued Tyler's activities after his arrest, trying to maintain control over the situation and continue to terrorize Emma. Using complex anonymity schemes and numerous fake accounts, he attempted to create the illusion that the threat from Tyler had not disappeared. Maintaining an atmosphere of fear and anxiety, the police began preparing for David's arrest. They gathered all necessary evidence and monitored his activities to ensure he did not manage to escape. The operation was meticulously planned. Officers used data on his whereabouts and digital traces to locate him and prepare for the arrest. One early morning, while David was attempting to send threatening messages again, the police raided his apartment. The operation was successful, and David was apprehended without incident. Computers, phones, and other devices containing evidence of his criminal activities were seized from his home. During the search, records of correspondence, fake accounts, and even documents confirming his connection to Tyler were discovered. After his arrest, David began cooperating with the police, but his confessions only confirmed the suspicions. He admitted to being involved in cyberstalking and extortion and that his aim was to continue Tyler's work using all available methods. David also revealed that he had planned even more serious manipulations if he had not been arrested. The police held a press conference to announce the completion of the investigation and David's arrest. This announcement made big news in the local media, and many people who had been victims of Tyler and his accomplices learned that the perpetrators had been caught. For Emma, it was a long-awaited relief, though the fear and stress from her experiences did not completely disappear and continued to haunt her for some time.